Hi, I'm Shashank Bhargav, and you're listening to Three Things, the Indian Express news show. In this episode, we talk about the toll that the economic crisis has taken on the working women in Delhi. We also take a quick look at the conviction of Hafiz Saeed by a Pakistan court. But first, we talk about Jammu and Kashmir. For some time now, the politics in Jammu and Kashmir has largely remained inactive. The region has been under the governor's rule since 2018. Plus, after the August 5th decision, J&K, which was a state, was turned into a union territory. And that meant it no longer had a functioning state assembly, the main body of elected representatives. Moreover, local political leaders in the region, including Farooq Abdullah, Omar Abdullah, and Mehbooba Mufti, as part of the clampdown by the central government until fairly recently, had been detained under the draconian Public Safety Act. But now, the politics in the region is set to revive, and this is due to the introduction of the District Development Councils, which is a new tier of governance in J&K. In this segment, Naveed Iqbal, who reports on Jammu and Kashmir for the Indian Express, joined us on a call from Srinagar to talk about exactly what District Development Councils are. Before we begin, though, here's a quick note. In this segment, two abbreviations will be used a lot. One is DDC, which stands for District Development Councils. And the second is PAGD, which stands for People's Alliance for Gupkar Declaration, which is an alliance of all the mainstream parties in J&K. We'll talk about them in detail later as well, but it'll be helpful to remember them. Now, here's Naveed talking about DDCs.
The District Development Councils are said to be a third tier of governance in Jammu and Kashmir. The Ministry of Home Affairs on October 16th brought an amendment to the J&K Panchayati Raj Act through which this new tier of governance was introduced. So they are going to be after the panchayats and then the block development councils, the district development councils are going to come in.
So the first tier of governance are the panchayats, then the second tier are the block development councils, and now the third tier are the district development councils or DDCs. Though, here's why the DDCs are different. Naveed explains that while the representatives of the block development councils are elected from among the sarpanches, the representatives of the DDCs will come through direct elections. This is significant because, like mentioned earlier, the region right now lacks a functioning assembly and elected legislatures. Naveed says that although the DDC representatives will not replace the representatives of the assembly, they're just short of that.
So, in that sense, they are going to be important because until now, people have not had elected representatives to take their larger issues to. There were, of course, sarpanches and panches and urban local body representatives, but those were very localized issues. Whereas the DDCs have powers to plan for a whole district, and it will include elected members in the future, as well as MPs, etc. So they will have powers to plan for the districts and make 5-year development plans and finalize plans that the Gram Panchayats and the block development councils will pass along, and they will go through scrutiny in these DDCs. So they're likely to have 5 standing committees for finance, development, public works, health, education, and welfare. And these will become the new governing unit in Jammu and Kashmir. So from that aspect, they are important. They also help to sort of revive politics in J&K. So since October last year, in fact, since June 2018, when the last BJP government fell, since then, politics has not really been active in J&K, so to speak. But this will give a sense of revival of politics in Jammu and Kashmir also.
This system is new for Jammu and Kashmir. And according to it, there are going to be 14 DDC representatives in each of the 20 districts of Jammu and Kashmir. The elections for the DDCs are scheduled to take place later this month. Many believe that the introduction of the DDCs is part of the BJP's plan to consolidate political support at the grassroots level, and that they had been hoping that the local political parties will boycott the DDC elections, and this way they would be able to win them easily. But Naveed says that the mainstream political parties, which have all allied together to form the PAGD, responded to the announcement of the DDC elections differently.
The announcement came just before Mehbooba Mufti was released, The first reaction for everyone was to sit back and consider whether they were going to contest this, because panchayat elections, the mainstream boycotted. They did not contest the panchayat elections, not directly, at least through proxies, of course. But then significantly, the PAGD, which is an amalgam of 7 political parties of J&K, Congress is in and out of it. They sometimes participate, sometimes they don't. They then decided to contest these polls, which for them was a checkmate to the BJP, because they believed that the BJP was counting on a boycott so that they could perhaps sweep these elections. But now, with all the mainstream parties of J&K coming together, they are going to give a tough fight.
Naveed says that this decision by the local parties is their way of showing strength.
If they come out from this with bigger numbers, they can show the center that they are the true representatives of J&K and its people. Because in the elections that they lost, and NC leaders have told us this, that they realize that you can't leave institutions unattended. So with that in mind, they've decided to contest these polls.
Now, as PAGD, which also wants to restore the special status of J&K, prepares for these elections, on Tuesday, Union Home Minister Amit Shah called the alliance the Gupkar Gang and said that it, along with the Congress, wanted to take J&K back to the era of terror and turmoil. He also called it an unholy global Gadbandhan and said that the PAGD wanted foreign forces to intervene in J&K. Former Chief Ministers Mehbooba Mufti and Omar Abdullah, who are both part of the PAGD, linked Shah's comments to the alliance participating in the elections.
So all parties reacted sharply to the Home Minister's allegations, especially because this wasn't a passing remark in an interview or, in a press conference. The Home Minister clearly meant to hit out at these parties, and he made a direct statement through his Twitter account. All parties have reacted sharply, and they've said that we are the mainstream. We can't be the mainstream without contesting elections. So why should we be called, a gang for that? They've also, in stories that we've done, they've been saying repeatedly that they cannot cede their space to the BJP. They have been making inroads in panchayats and urban local bodies, etc. So while the PAGD has come together to seek restoration of J&K's pre-August 5th status, they would want to have representatives in democratic institutions going forward.
In another development, with only a few days left in the DDC elections, the centre has issued orders to move an additional 25,000 security personnel to the Union Territory. This is happening at a time when the region is already flooded with security personnel. Candidates participating in the elections are also being taken away by the J&K police to, quote, cluster accommodations as soon as they file nomination papers due to a perceived threat to their lives. But candidates and political parties that Indian Express spoke with said that they were being confined to these spaces against their wishes, and this had severely restricted their movement and ability to campaign. Right now, the support that a lot of these mainstream parties have in the region is at its lowest. At the same time, because of the clampdown, thousands of detentions, and scrapping of J&K's special status, there is also a lot of resentment towards the BJP. This is perhaps the reason why the PAGD, Naveed says, are confident about their chances in the DDC elections.
I mean, they won't get this on the record, but there are 280 seats with 14 in each district. So 140 of them are within the 10 districts of Kashmir, which PAGD largely represents. They are hoping that out of the 40, they'll get at least 100. These are, of course, numbers that they speak of off the record. BJP has enhanced its presence in Jammu, but with the domicile clause being brought in and now these land laws, there is some resentment in Jammu as well. So it's too soon to say how these elections will pan out, but at least in Kashmir, they are hoping they'll have a majority. The PAGD, which is the People's Alliance for Gupkar Declaration.
Dear listeners, before we move on to the rest of the show, I just wanted your quick attention. One of the big reasons people say they like this show is because it helps them understand the news better. It provides them with the context they need to see the bigger picture. And there is perhaps no other place that does that better than Indian Express's Explained section. We on Three Things refer to the section regularly, and it helps us make this show. If you're a regular reader of Indian Express, you know how useful the Explained section can be, especially when you're looking for in-depth analysis by the right experts. You can log on to indianexpress.com/explained and access the coverage 24/7. Explained by Indian Express, where news that matters is explained by experts who know the subject. Now, back to the show. And next, we talk about the economic crisis that has been induced by the COVID-19 lockdown. The Indian Express has been doing a series of how this time has affected the urban poor in India. The latest contribution to this series was done by Somya Lakhani, who reported on the kind of economic distress that working women are facing in Delhi. Somya joined us to talk about the struggles these women are going through and in what ways these struggles stand out from others.
One of the things that really strikes out and stands out in this particular story is that a lot of the women are first time earners. They're the first women in their families to step out of homes and to, get jobs and to earn money. A lot of these women have also left smaller towns to come and live in a bigger city. So there are a lot of struggles that they've had to deal with.
For the story, one of the women she had interviewed was from the town of Bareilly in Uttar Pradesh. Around 3 years ago, she had decided to move to Delhi and work in the hospitality sector. Somya says that this decision of hers had caused a tiff in the family.
Because they just never imagined that their girl would, that their daughter would go to a big city and live without the parents. There are a lot of restrictions, obviously, on younger women. Irrespective of that tiff, she reached Delhi. She was earning 24,000 a month till about March and April. And then the lockdown happens, and suddenly, that sense of freedom and that sense of ambition that she had worked so hard for and fought her parents for was gone. Right now she has to depend on her savings, and that money that she was saving was for a bigger dream, which was that I'm going to go and study German, and I'm going to become a translator, and I'm going to leave this industry and earn twice the sum that I'm earning right now, in a span of a year or two.
It is aspirations like these that the economic crisis has dampened. Somya says that the other group of women that have really been affected are the ones who have been the sole breadwinners in the family.
One of them who I spoke to has a family of 8 and a bedridden father. And, her mother is a domestic help, and this woman works with a project in charge in the development sector. With her losing her job, what happens is that, now they've had to sell off furniture and television and borrow money. So it is particularly hard. And in some cases, women also feel that now their families will pressure them into getting married, something that they had maybe managed to delay or postpone for a few years by saying that, hey, I'm pursuing a career, I'm making money, let me concentrate on that. So, just losing your job is not just, losing money or salary at the end of the month. It's also giving away a part of your ambition. It's also giving away a sense of freedom that you had acquired, and, you created space for yourself.
The choices that many women have had to make because of financial constraints is disheartening. An example of that is the 29-year-old woman named Reshma who Soumya spoke with. Before she lost her job working at an energy policy institute, she had been the main earner in the family. Her husband had been unemployed for a year. They have a 4-year-old daughter. And after losing their jobs, they just couldn't take care of her. Couldn't even afford a glass of milk a day. Reshma had to send the girl back to live with her parents.
So, because she said, I can't afford to take care of a young child when I don't have salary coming in. So, imagine this is a woman who's had to stay away from her daughter for 6 months to 8 months, only gets to see her over the weekends. One is that. Two, there are obviously younger women, a beautician who I was speaking to who lost her job where she was earning upwards of 10,000 a month, where she said, I'm willing to do anything as long as it pays. So, even if there's a job that pays me 3,000 bucks a month, I'm willing to do it. So imagine how much depreciation they're okay with, right? Somebody who was earning 10,000 is now okay even getting a job that pays her 3,000, even if it takes the same kind of time. I spoke to a school teacher who was a sports teacher, a PT teacher, and she lost her job because she said, PT kaun karta hai online? It doesn't make sense. So she was chucked out of her job, and now she got a job as a bouncer, but that doesn't pay 1/4 of what she was earning, when she was a teacher. So one is that. Then of course there were women who said that there's a school teacher who did not want to be identified in the story, who said she's taken loans from 11 people in the last 7 months. So, there is now a debt that has to be paid. There is that constant pressure.
She says that there are also women who have had to sell things at home just to get some cash, pawning off their jewelry, selling off furniture, the TV, the almirah, or old machinery. Plus, they've also had to borrow a fair amount of money.
And this is money that has to be paid off. A lot of them have borrowed from relatives, but a lot of them have also borrowed from money lenders. So there is this rising debt. And of course, cutting corners in terms of, the kind of food you're eating, the lifestyle you've led till before this, ensuring that घर में तेल कम use हो रहा है, घर में सब्जी कम आ रही है, maybe eating one less meal. So, there are several sacrifices, and these are the options that remain. And every one of them I spoke to said that they are looking for a job desperately every single day. And there's just aren't jobs anymore.
These struggles, loss of jobs, and cutting corners also comes with a sense of shame. Somya says that there is a realization that the upward mobility that they had aspired to achieve is now more elusive than ever.
There are women who have spoken to whose parents were, either domestic helps or an auto rickshaw driver or somebody who worked in a dry cleaning shop. Now, these women have educated themselves, gone out, worked, done jobs that pay them more than their parents earn. A lot of them, even got their parents to maybe retire or take it easy with work, willing to kind of really bear the burden of finances at home. And suddenly, you're under the impression that my life is now going to improve. From a lower middle class family, I'm becoming a middle class family. There is that upward mobility that has happened. And then a lockdown happens, you lose your job, and suddenly you're back to, where you were, say, maybe 6 years ago or 10 years ago, or you're back to what your childhood in the 90s, in the early 2000s was, when your parents were earning not as much as you are earning right now. So there is shame, there is fear, there is embarrassment, because you had suddenly stopped borrowing money. You would, somebody had bought a bike for their brother, somebody had invested money, in a committee, maybe somebody had maybe bought something, and now they've had to sell off those things. And you had also gotten accustomed to a certain lifestyle and a certain privilege that comes with saying, this is my money and I decide how I spend it.
Meanwhile, Delhi has been reporting some of the highest COVID-19 cases in the country. Every day, the city reports about 7 to 8,000 people who test positive. And this, Somya says, means that there are now more restrictions when it comes to getting a job.
There is a chance, there is that fear that, maybe markets will be shut down briefly. Maybe people will stop going to office. Maybe people will now stop going to parlors or, shopping malls, something that we had all begun, say, maybe in August and September, when we had started going out, when you thought the industry might pick up a little bit. With restrictions in place, with cases rising, there is that uncertainty if a lot of these women will get their jobs back or not. And the shutdown of markets is something that the Delhi government wants to be able to do if rules are not followed. So I think right now, we're a bit stuck, because how do you give employment? You can give ration, you can give food, you can help out with those things, but how do you help out with employment if there might be a shutdown?
And in the end, we talk about Hafiz Saeed, the founder of the Islamist terrorist organization Lashkar-e-Taiba and chief of Jamaat-ud-Dawa. Hafiz Saeed was yesterday convicted by a Pakistan court in 2 terror financing cases and was sentenced to a total of 11 years in prison. Saeed is the mastermind behind the 2018 Mumbai terror attacks, and his organization Lashkar-e-Taiba, among other things, has been involved in the 2001 shootout at Parliament House in New Delhi and in the 2016 attack on the military headquarters in Uri. After pressure from the international community, Pakistan has been trying to probe operations and functioning of the Lashkar-e-Taiba and its charitable wing Jamaat-ud-Dawa in order to convince the Financial Action Task Force that it is taking steps to check terror financing. The conviction of Hafiz Saeed comes at a time when Pakistan could get blacklisted by the Financial Action Task Force, which is a Paris-based anti-terror watchdog. Getting blacklisted severely hampers a country's ability to get international funds from multinational companies or lending agencies. something that Pakistan heavily relies on with its economy in a bad shape. Saeed's conviction could perhaps then be viewed as a reflection of Pakistan's changing approach towards its treatment of terror groups, given FATF's actions and warnings. You were listening to Three Things by the Indian Express. Today's show was written and produced by me, Shashank Bhargav, and as always was edited and mixed by our producer Joshua Thomas. Before we go, here's another reminder to check out Indian Express's Explain section. You can log on to indianexpress.com/explain and find in-depth analysis by the right experts. It has everything you need to know to understand the news better and see the bigger picture. If you like this show, then you can subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. You can also recommend the show to someone you think will like it, share it with a friend or someone in your family. It's the best way for people to get to know about us. You can also tweet us at Express Audio and write to us at podcast@indianexpress.com.